Start the stream. And looks like we're going. So, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Edison Club podcast. It's episode number 3. Here tonight with co-host Justin. Have a couple people missing tonight, but we're going to be talking about how we started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! So, before we get started, as always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really means a lot to us when you guys do that. So, Justin, how did you start playing Yu-Gi-Oh?
Dude, it's crazy because I was in middle school. I think I was in 7th, 8th grade. And I saw a couple kids playing on the bleachers in the gym. And I was like, dude, the artwork on these cards just looks crazy. You know, I think there were some other card games out at the time. I know Magic was out. I wasn't into it. There was like some weird, I can't think of the brand of the card game, but I had been collecting those cards, and I just thought the monsters looked cool.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a gas station, of all things, and they had a starter deck Kaiba and a Legend of Blue Eyes booster pack blister at the store. And I picked up the deck. I remember it was $10, and I got the booster pack. It was like $3 and some change. And I remember I was so disappointed that the booster pack didn't actually have a Blue Eyes White Dragon in it. And I was like, well, the deck came with one, and it's on the pack, so why doesn't it have a Blue Eyes in it?
Yeah.
And that's when you learn to read the back of the pack. You go figure, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players don't read. It's, random
even
cards.
Back then, no one read.
Yeah, and I got a Mishazur. I think it's the dolphin that has like the missile strapped to it. And for the longest time, that was like, besides Dark Magician, that was like my favorite artwork on the card. But me and the kids at the school that was playing on the bleachers, we started trading cards. We started playing on the playground. Seriously on the playground. Just playing outside our apartments and stuff like that, because we all lived in a pretty close proximity to each other. We would take cards to middle school and play to the high school. And back when we were kids, same thing for you too. Like, people made fun of us.
Oh yeah, relentlessly.
It was like Yu-Gi-Oh! Was not a cool thing at all. Like, it was not cool to like comics, to play cards. None of that was cool. And you know what? Like, we didn't care. Did we played on the lunchroom? I remember that a kid had taken my cards and threw them into the trash can in the bathroom. And luckily enough, I was able to recover those. But which is completely opposite now, because that same dude plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Now on Master Duel. And it's crazy that things that were like uncool back in the day is super popular today, and kids that didn't play it when we were in school are playing it now. But that's how I got started. Of course, the anime, that was a big inspiration. But I didn't start watching the anime until I picked up the card game, believe it or not. So the anime, the card game, and it's been almost 20 years now that I've been playing. So yeah, what about you?
Okay, so that was a good story. So if you're a long-time watcher and listener of the channel, you've heard my story a couple times. I started playing in the 5th grade, and this is basically, I remember this so vividly. So this is 2005, because basically the way the years lined up was what grade I was in. So 2005, I was in the 5th grade. And it was toward the end of the year. This is like the time period where you go through like EOGs and all this end of grade testing that kids really just don't even care about. Like, I'm in the 5th grade. Like, what are you going to do? And these kids at the lunchroom table had their cards, and I wanted one. And one of the guys just gave me like this Zumbraya the Dark that was destroyed. It was like creased in half. But that was my first Yu-Gi-Oh card, was Zumbraya the Dark. And I thought that card was so good, because like they explained it to me how you could just summon it because you didn't have to tribute, and I was like, this guy's 2100. This card's insane, And so kind of one thing turned into another with that, and I started watching. This was around the time like I started watching Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, so I really wanted Elemental Hero cards, and either my mom or my dad, I can't remember which one, took me to Walmart, and they had the Spellcaster deck there. Came with like Dark Eradicator, Warlock, cards like that. Yep. So I got that, and that was kind of, it had Zumbraya the Dark in it, of course. I did put that card in it. That was kind of like my introduction to Yu-Gi-Oh. And it wasn't long after that some of the same people at school told me that, hey, there's a shop on Main Street. It was like the most random shop. It sold candles and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I don't think they ever actually sold any candles, but they had like these huge like 4-row boxes that every card in there was 10 cents a piece. So I would go there. My dad would take me every Friday after school, and I could get like sometimes I'd get like $5 worth, and then every now and again he'd let me get $10 worth, and that's a lot of cards. Like when you're a kid, like that is a lot of cards. So I remember the owners of the shop helping me look through all this bulk to find Elemental Hero cards, which I definitely did put into my spellcaster deck. So I had Elemental Hero spellcasters, and I remember going to school. It was like probably one of the last few days of school, and just beating everyone with that Elemental Hero spellcaster deck. Probably, granted, probably cheated, and we didn't know the right rules, but you know, it was real to me. So,
Dude, that spellcaster deck, let me tell you, I remember where I lived at. What I was doing the day that I bought that deck, I was actually watching Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. And because that deck came out in 2005, I believe.
yes.
Early 2006. So went to Walmart because me and my buddies, we used to walk to Walmart. It wasn't too far away from the house. So we used our allowance. If we weren't getting Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, we were getting Shonen Jumps. Because guess what? They used to come with Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. So I actually put together a spellcaster deck. And I didn't care what deck anybody else played. My deck was like a mashup of spellcasters. It had like one Dark Magician, one Dark Eradicator. It had even like the Ancient Lamp that came in the Shonen Jump promo. Every spellcaster that you could think of, I had. And my buddy Madison was actually the only person that was trying to put together like a deck that made sense. So he was running like some kind of chaos BLS deck and was kicking all of our butts at school. But you know, I didn't care because the spellcaster deck was all I cared about.
Yeah.
And up until like 2009 or 10, I was all about just collecting my favorite cards into a pile. And it wasn't until we started going to Books A Million and playing on Saturdays that like, oh wait, you get packs for winning, and it felt good to win. So that's when I started sort of going into a competitive standpoint and putting together things like zombies or Gladiator Beast. You know, taking those decks. We really didn't have access back then, or we really didn't try to. We didn't really have the resources to find what competitive decks were. We really didn't get on YouTube. It wasn't really a thing yet. Pojo was the closest thing to like a competitive community that we had access to. And me and my buddy really didn't have internet, so we couldn't get on there and trade. Now, we had a friend that would trade and stuff like that for us. But it wasn't until I graduated high school and got my own apartment, got my laptop, had my own income, that I was like, okay, Troll and Toad and TCG Player, you know, those are things now. So it was about a 5 or 6 year gap of just like, actually about like a 7-year gap of just playing for fun. I still play for fun, but I mean, you know, just collecting cards. But I remember that when I was young, you know, probably 2006, 2007, I was like, you know what? I was like, I really hate spell cards. Spell cards aren't cool. So I'm going to make a deck of nothing but monsters. And I remember I was getting decimated at the playground with my friend Austin. And he just kept like whipping me, dude, with like Mystical Knight of Jackal and soul exchanging my cards for his Mystical Knight of Jackal. And dude, I was so devastated. I'm like, you know what? We're going to take our decks, we're going to shuffle them together and split them up and divide it evenly. And that's our new decks. And he's like, but that's not fair to me. I'm like, but it's fair to me, you know? Like it was just, it's crazy
that
how
was why
stuff
it was
like
your
that worked
rule.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I would get in trouble, my mom, she's like, the only thing I can take away from you when you get in trouble is your Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Because I really didn't. I had a PS2, but I didn't play. My whole life was playing Yu-Gi-Oh cards or watching the anime. So I remember distinctly that one day she was so mad at me for something. I forget what I did, but she threw my cards in the trash can at Walmart, and I had a Dark Paladin, secret rare, the promo, in that stack of cards, and it was bent all to crap because we all kept our cards together with rubber bands, you know, in our pocket or whatever. We didn't care, and I was so devastated. And thankfully, one of my friends who lived up the road from Walmart, went into the trash can and dug my deck out for me. So my mom's like, "How'd you get that back?" Don't worry about it. I hid it in my drawer. But so it's crazy because Yu-Gi-Oh, man, it's got such a large place in my heart, and it still does.
I put a little paying a little bit of tribute to the Dark Paladin that got thrown in the trash on the screen. I put "Rip Dark Paladin."
Dude, no, literally, man, and it's funny too because it's crazy how much Yu-Gi-Oh impacts people. Back when we was in high school, my buddy Madison, which you've met, and I told you this story, but I won't tell it for the podcast. He had a bent up Blackluster Soldier.
Oh, this story is crazy.
Complete, folded in half, right? He had this thing since high school. Okay, so we graduate high school and we all get an apartment together. Me, Madison, and my friend Kurt, and we all play cards. And Madison's the better player out of the three of us. Kurt's probably the second best, and I'm by far the worst. But Madison loved this Blackluster Soldier. I don't know how it got bent. I don't know if I think he pulled it from a pack. It got bent somehow. I don't know how. Anyways, he played this card competitively during Edison format, during Tengu Plant format. So later on, a couple years later, he ended up selling the card on eBay, probably around 2012, 2013. He sold the card on eBay. So it was about a year ago that he started getting big into GOAT format. And he's like, "Man, I really, really miss my BLS, man. It just has such a sentimental value to me." He went on eBay. He found the transaction where he sold the card. He found the guy's account, messaged the seller on eBay, or the buyer, and the buyer's like, "Yeah, I think I might have it in some bulk. Let me check. I don't play anymore." He still had that Blackluster Soldier. And Madison, I forget how much he sold it for. He sent it to Madison for free, just because he still had it after all those years and it meant so much to Madison. So Madison has a near mint first ed copy, IOC, that he keeps in the binder because he's playing his bent in half version that he had over 10 years ago.
That's actually
almost 15 years ago, actually, because he had it in high school.
I don't think I have anything now, for as far as Yu-Gi-Oh goes, that I had 10 years ago.
So my grandmother passed away 9 years ago, and she was like, my grandma was my favorite person in the entire world. That's who I grew up with. And I remember we were at Walmart, and my grandma was on a fixed income, so she didn't have a lot of money. She was on disability. And they had just released the Dark Magician Girl 10, 2004. And that was the first alternate artwork of Dark Magician Girl that came out. And like I said, I had a Spellcaster deck. Like, I had to have this deck. I had to have this 10, And it was on a shelf, and it said $14.99. It was the wrong price. It was $19.99. My grandma was going through her wallet. At the time, I was too naive to realize my grandma really didn't have the money for it. But she ended up surprising me by bringing that 10 home with us, because she told the lady at the register that it was $14.99 when she thought it was, so the woman rang it up for $14.99. So she had just enough money to get me that Dark Magician Girl. And I still have that Dark Magician Girl to this day. Like, I probably have gotten rid of every card that I own except that one card.
I'll tell you a short story about something that happened to me that makes me so sad. So, like I said, I don't think I have anything that I had when I was a kid now as far as cards go. But there was one card I had, and when I was younger, that I really wanted. And I wanted Dark Magician of Chaos. I didn't care the rarity, whatever. But back then, I'm pretty sure it was like just a gold rare and just like the IOC and like it's like Dark Revelation. I think it has 2 ultra prints. But this is back when I was too young to really order stuff on the internet. I didn't have a debit card, credit card, whatever. I actually remember my mom ordering me. My first ever order came from Troll and Toad, and my mom mailed them a check. That is just like so crazy to me now. But getting back on topic, I wanted a Dark Magician of Chaos so bad that I would have literally traded anything I had for it. And there was a guy that went to our locals. His name was Saul. And the first time he showed up, this guy had a page of Dark Magician of Chaos in his binder. Now keep in mind, like I said, this card is banned at this time. Like, it's pretty much unplayable. There's no Time Wizard format. There's no GOAT format enthusiast at this time. Yeah. This is like 2009, 2008. And he was so nice that he actually gave me a first edition Dark Magician of Chaos from IOC. It was damaged. It wasn't mint, but like the damage was on the back. So it looked good in the sleeve. I kept that card forever. It was in my binder. I actually at one point even had it in one of those like cases, like you put a prize card in. It has like the 2 screws at the top of it.
Yeah.
I kept it in there, and I finally decided. I got out of the game for a long time, and when I started playing again, I was like, I'm gonna put that card in my binder because I want that with me. Because at that time, like it was pretty unheard of for someone to just give away like a $30-$40 card, and I remember it was at one of my first few regionals, probably the 3rd regional I went to. I had a bunch of extra bulk cards I just wanted to sell, so I just sold the whole binder to a vendor and didn't realize until I got back home that the Dark Magician of Chaos was in that binder.
Oh.
And that, I mean, I'll just be honest with you, I cried. Like, that upset me so bad. Like, it didn't even matter the money I got from selling it because I just lost something that I wanted. Like, that I just, thought so much of. And I did have access to the internet at this time, and I tried to find like the vendor online, but I could never find them. And it's been so long ago now, I don't think I even could. But yeah, that was probably my favorite card I ever had that I'll never have again, just because of the sentimental value that it had to me.
I had some DDS Dark Magicians. I sold them to a loser one time.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a Dark Magician starter deck Yugi that I got from a dear friend back, when I started playing, but I can't tell you if it's the same one or not. I try to keep it together with my Dark Magician girl, but I can't tell you that's the same one. I would like to be able to, but I can't. But that Dark Magician girl has so much just sentimental, because my grandma's not here anymore. And it's not my favorite artwork, but it's my favorite. I think it's my favorite card just because of what it means.
Yeah.
And I was able to actually get online and track down an MT10, so I could sort of like. I eventually want to put that card into like one of those cases you were talking about, and
yes,
this is right next to the 10. But speaking of like, I guess how we got into Yu-Gi-Oh, like what is keeping you in Yu-Gi-Oh?
What keeps? Okay, so for those of you that don't know, and if it's not obvious enough, I play very, very little modern format Yu-Gi-Oh, that's a discussion for another video as to why. But what keeps me in Yu-Gi-Oh is obviously the people. I have friends that I would just simply just have nothing else in common with if it wasn't for the game, which that's kind of sad in hindsight to say, but most of my friends I have came from Yu-Gi-Oh. So I think it's the people, it's having something to do. And I also think that it's fun to be able to think about something like a lot of the time that like, oh, I have this idea for this deck, or I have this card I want to try out. It keeps things new. It keeps things exciting. Gives you an excuse to travel. It gives you an excuse to get out, go hang out with some friends, get some games in, stuff like that. So I think that's what keeps me in. And it's also like the end goal for me, like, is not the same as it is for everyone else. Like, I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh to just play Yu-Gi-Oh for fun. Obviously, something I've preached on the channel since day one is that you should be playing with the intention of having fun, which obviously I do. But the end goal for me is to at least prove to myself that I am a good player. And I think on some days I feel like I am, and some days I feel like I'm not. But I try to look back often at where I've came from and how far I've come, and there's definitely been improvement there. But I think it's like I keep chasing the end goal of, like, I guess for Edison, for the Edison format, it would be like winning, a few consecutive tournaments back to back. Whereas, like, for someone with Modern, it would be like winning a YCS or, winning or topping Nats, something like that. So what about you? What keeps you in Yu-Gi-Oh?
Well, several things. First off, I think it's just my innate love for the game. The game has got me through some rough times. My stepdad, who I considered my real dad, passed away when I was in 8th grade. So I think just the show, that card game really held me together. Um, my friends. And then, in 2011, really, when I started playing more competitively and going to regionals, we had our own vehicle. And I say we, me and my roommates, we were still poor by all means, so we had to share a car, but we would go to regionals as far as Maryland and stuff. And of course, there for the first few events, I was getting my butt kicked. Madison was doing good. Um, and I think it was when I topped my first regional that like I had like a different kind of love for the game, more so than just it was more than just that comfort feeling. It was it's hard to describe, but it was like a different feeling for the game.
People can
And I had a
say
different
like it doesn't matter if you lose all they
yeah.
want to, but there is no better feeling than when you like are at the top tables, even at just a regional, and like you get somewhere in that top 8. Like there is just no better feeling, at least for me. I've never won or top a YCS before. Regional
No,
top
and
eight's my biggest accomplishment, but there is just nothing that feels as good as that does in that moment.
it's crazy too, is because I remember going to a regional. Sorry, that's my son playing with the Spider-Man toy. I remember going to a regional in Maryland back in 2012. I think it was right at the Generation Force release. Hold on a second.
Yeah, you're good. Justin's just going to go take care of his son real quick.
So it was right at the Generation Force release, and it may have been the weekend it released, but we went to Maryland and I did horrible. I remember I was doing so bad, but I focused on taking the time to like upgrade my deck. I was playing a version of zombie plants, and I remember I played every single round because first off, I didn't want to have like nothing to do while Madison was still playing. But I was like, you know what? This is the only way that I'm going to learn how to play my deck. And I remember like trading, buying cards. I walked away with like a playset, a tour guide, traded like a lot of my collection to have a competitive deck. And I think it was like 2 weeks later, maybe a month, I went to Star City Games in Roanoke. And it was the one day Madison had to work and couldn't go. And I ended up topping the regional without any of my friends there. So it was like, oh, wow, I want someone to share it. I had a friend there with me. His name was Jonathan, but he was like, he's more of like a really casual player. But I was like, man, these guys I've been traveling with, I've no one to share this moment with. I like, they're not going to believe me until I show them the picture of the paper. So he knows. Which I had a flip phone at the time too, so I couldn't even do that.
Yeah.
But thankfully, though,
I still have the picture of the paper at third place with my name next to it saved on my phone.
So I was like, I remember that I was like texting my friends, like, dude, guess what? So it was pretty cool. And then, like another one didn't even happen for me until 2016 because after Tengu Plant Format, I remember the ban list killed that deck. And I loved that deck so much. And probably because, it got me my top. But the ban list killed that deck. And I remember that like Lone Fire or Glow Up Bulb got banned. I remember that Spore got banned, I believe. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to play? And I didn't have the means to spend $500 on a new deck. You know how that is.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was just like devastated because I'm like, man, playing competitively is rewarding at times, but then it punishes you too. And back then cards like Chaos Sorcerer, Lila were like $30 a piece. It was insane. And cards have always been expensive, that's one thing that's never changed. And I was like, I don't have a deck to play. And I sort of just lost motivation to want to play. I still kept up with like collecting cards. Like if like a new Dark Magician card came out or something like that looked cool, I would add it to the collection. But it wasn't until 2016 when Madison started playing again and traveling again. And he's like, hey, Blue Eyes is pretty good. And, it's really simple for you to learn and get back into the game because I really hadn't paid attention to the pendulum stuff or anything like that. And I remember I picked up the whole deck from him. And I forget what deck he was playing. But we played for a few months. And I remember we went to another regional. And I had Chaos Max in my deck. And like a lot of people in that regional were on the Herald deck. So it was just like Summon Herald in defense mode. and I was just piercing, like blowing over all their monsters and stuff, and that was very rewarding too. There was a time where I was playing like a Lightsworn ruler deck, Lightsworn Dragon ruler, back when like all the big dragons were like limited to one apiece.
Yeah, that was back when they played like Eclipse Wyvern, Light Ray Diablos,
Yeah,
stuff like that.
but
So it was like half
there was
format, right?
yeah, there was like nobody to play with though. It was just me, and I'm like, why am I putting together a deck if there's no one to play against? So, um, I still play sometimes. Dueling book. It was called something else then. Dueling Network. So it wasn't until really, man. Like if it wasn't for I went to YCS Niagara in 2019. Me and Madison did, and I had Thunder Dragon. And Madison's talking about. I think it was right when the ban list hit. Colossus got banned and everything, and I was back in that same predicament I was in 2012. Like, man, my favorite deck's hit. What am I going to do? There's nobody around here to play with because my friend Kurt stopped playing. Madison didn't play as much. And it wasn't until actually that I met you online and realized you lived pretty close to me, about an hour,
Yeah, we're pretty
and
much a
I met a
Hallmark
whole
love
new
story.
group of people that played cards. So if it wasn't for meeting you guys, I probably wouldn't be playing in person.
That's our
yeah,
Hallmark movie.
That's true too. And not trying to like brag or anything, but I don't know if you would even be into like having the Dark Magician channel at first. If it wasn't for me bringing the deck to locals one day.
Yeah, honestly, like you're right, because like you were the one that really got me into the Dark Magician deck, and that kind of brings me to a topic I want to discuss real quick. Um, and I'll go first on this one while I've got it on my mind. Is everybody in Yu-Gi-Oh, that's whether you're a YCS champion, whether you're table 500, whatever, has had someone that was either like a mentor to you or someone that you looked up to. And I'll go first and talk about mine. I had a few. So obviously, Ty Payne, TYP336. Make sure you go check him out. Was one of my first friends I ever made at the Candle Shop / Yu-Gi-Oh shop, and then later the flea market locals, which is tales for another time. But the second one was his name was John Jones, and this guy was the Lightsworn Goat, and he'll probably end up listening to this, and I am hyping you up. And then the third one, his name was Michael Gammons, and these three guys, like the three of them ran every locals I ever went to, and I think that they were all kind of my mentor in a way. Even if that's not exactly what they were, but they all kind of, seeing them do so good made me want to do better. Like it made me, I was not okay with doing bad anymore when these guys were consistently winning locals and consistently going to events, consistently getting their invites. And I remember there was like a game where unfortunately I wasn't there to see it, but Michael Gammons played Patrick Hoban, and I think it was Michael was playing Spellbook and Hoban was playing probably Dragon Ruler. And I just remember hearing about that match and like hearing about how intense like the game 3 was, and I was just like, that's where I want to be in Yu-Gi-Oh. And I've kept that same mentality up until now. So I think if it wasn't for them, I think that I would be one of the people that's just okay with just being good enough. Like, which I never will be that way. Like, I'm always looking to try to get better and, kind of break that barrier. So do you have anybody that you kind of looked up to other than, Yugi Moto and all those guys?
Well, dude, like, literally our Yu-Gi-Oh group was like me, Madison, and my friend Kurt. And those two guys were pretty much neck and neck, like as far as like how talented they were at the game. And they just had that natural ability to where like they just knew lines of play that I would never think of. And Madison is a really, really good deck builder. And he thinks of things that like I've never even heard of before. And I don't know how he does this. Because I don't know about you, but like I remember YCF Charlotte, he did really good with that Dino deck, and then all of a sudden his list started picking up online.
Yes.
And people played it for a little bit too, and that was because of the video that you did that you posted on your channel. And I noticed that a lot of his tech started picking up too, and I was like, man, that's Madison's work, but I think playing with Madison it helped me to become a good player. But when Madison wasn't playing, I had nobody to really play against. So like I never really progressed as a player. And it wasn't until when I was playing with Madison that I would be that player. But I remember that so there was this guy at locals at Star City. And Star City used to do all kinds of games. Now they're just Magic. But there was this guy that we call Scraps, and he wore a Jurassic Park hat every day and a Jurassic Park shirt. And I think he was like Mr. Rogers, like Jurassic Park version, because that's like the only outfit he had. And no, we called him Scraps. We called him Scraps because he literally played nothing but scraps. So this is like late 2010 maybe. That's all he played, right? So I remember him and Madison would have, good games and stuff. And Scraps was a really good player, not going to lie. I don't know. Some people say he cheated. I'm not going to say that. He always beat me.
I wouldn't do.
I
wouldn't talk about
remember
Scraps
that we would go to Star City just to see if we could beat him. And one day, my friend Kurt beat him with Flamvell Monarch, and that dude got so mad he threw his deck on the table and never came back to Star City again. Not while we were there, at least. So, funny story. I went to Roanoke at this locals we got up here I started going about a year ago, and kid you not, dude, I walk in, take a picture of this dude. He's wearing a Jurassic Park shirt, the Jurassic Park hat. It's the same dude.
He's wearing the same shirt?
Yes, the same dude 12 years later. And remind me when I get off this podcast, I got a picture on my phone that I sent to Madison and said, guess who I see? And I'll send it to you.
Bro, there's no way. Yes, that is insane.
As far as looking up to people, I'll be honest with you, man. Outside of Madison and Kurt, I really didn't get back into that competitive groove again until right before YCS Charlotte this year.
Yeah.
And not trying to give anyone a big head, but hanging out with Corey from Easy Gaming. For those you guys don't know Corey, he's a really cool dude. Corey is so Corey can sit down and tell you what you're doing wrong, and he can coach you on it, but be very he's very nice about it. And he's been playing the game a lot, a lot less of a time than we have. And just staying with him that weekend, in the room and just playing and practicing for the YCS. Corey's very humble dude, and he's a very good player. And I really look up to I do look up to Corey too, even though he's been playing half the time that we have. But it's crazy too because I think it's just that's a good group of guys down there.
Dude,
in Greensboro and stuff. Yeah,
Corey is honestly the brother that I always wanted but never had. That dude has become one of my best friends in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And I agree with everything that you said. If I was going to go to a regional tomorrow and that man told me I needed to be playing Celtic Guardian in my Tier Elements deck, I would not question it. I would just put it in there and I'd go play it because there is some reason why it's supposed to be in there. Wouldn't even question it. I'd put it in there and not think twice about it. Turn in my deck list. That'd be it.
No, and it's crazy too. You mentioned Ty because it's a small world, but because you and Ty are really good friends. But before I even knew you, I knew Ty. And it was around 2012. No, it was around 2010 and 11 that I would go to King, North Carolina a lot, and I would see Ty every now and then. We would play Yu-Gi-Oh, and he was really big into Lightsworn at the time. So I remember playing Yu-Gi-Oh with Ty too. And so when I went to Greensboro or Mount Airy and saw you at the locals there at Paradise, and Ty walks up, I'm like, what? What's going on?
Yeah.
Everything came back full circle, but. Not changing topics, but Madison probably, if Madison, like Corey is to you, if Madison were to tell me, hey, Madison could be out of the game for a year, right? And Madison could come back and tell you, hey, don't play this card. No, I'm not going to play it. Or I can explain to Madison, hey, the other day, he's like, what does tier do? I pretty much gave him the rundown, and he came up with counters off the top of his head, things that I normally wouldn't think of. And he's already sat down and put together a Dino deck to combat this format.
Yeah.
And so he's getting into Edison now. He bought his Edison deck. He came over the other day. We played Edison and played Goat. And he just picks up my Edison deck and he's critiquing it. And he's like, why are you playing Mirror Force? Why are you not playing this? Why are you playing that and stuff? He's like, this is a bad deck. And he wasn't trying to be mean about it, but he's like, you need to look at this deck and you need to well, you need to give me a good reason why you play these cards. Um, and he's just like he's more of a he's a harsh coach, but everything he says has reason, you know.
Yeah, that's important.
So I look up to him in that aspect. Yeah.
I feel like in some ways I need someone like that too, because sometimes I'll get on this tangent of like something that I just believe is correct, and sometimes I need someone to be like, Boyd, you're being terrible. Like, you do, do not put that card in your deck. That is terrible. It does not matter. And it's good to have a friend like that. It really is.
And the advice he gives me, I mean, it works because I totally kicked his butt and go. I don't know if he's want to listen to this or not.
Yeah.
But like I'm sort of there to like give him like, all right, these are the decks that are doing good. This is why. And he's like, okay, well, thanks for telling me that. Now I'm going to tell you how we're going to beat it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I have somebody like that. And all those years he trounced me on the playground at Books A Million, things like that. It's slowly but surely catching up to him. I think I'm just as good of a player as he is. He's still like a far better deck builder than I am, though. But yeah, I think that's what keeps me in a Yu-Gi-Oh, man. Is I think that group from North Carolina, you guys, Ty, Corey, the guys from Easy and stuff. That's what's keeping me in it, man. Because like I said, you know, outside of that, then I really don't have nobody else to play with.
Yeah. We'll switch gears for a second because I don't think this is something we've talked about on the channel. We touched briefly on it earlier, but like, so obviously I knew Austin on the podcast, who is not here tonight, from the flea market locals from years ago. Same thing with Cole. But the way that Justin and I became friends was very, very different. So this is 2020. So it's, you know, pandemic, and I decide that I had some driving forces in my life that didn't want me to play Yu-Gi-Oh, but I decided I was going to start playing Yu-Gi-Oh again. And Thunder Dragon was always a card I really liked. Had a friend named Brandon Combs that would play Thunder Dragon in all of his decks and make them into Chaos decks. And so like he played like Chaos Shaddoll at YCS Charleston 2015 with Thunder Dragon and Chaos Sorcerer BLS. Thought that was cool. So I really liked Thunder Dragon. So I was like, I'm gonna build, you know, this deck, and started playing again. Colossus gets banned. Very sad. But there are still things you can do. So I start posting in the Thunder Dragon group on Facebook. I'm like, hey, I need to know these combos. Because like people are saying like Batteryman Solar plus like Dragon Roar is like all these cards, and I'm just not seeing it. So the post goes pretty much ignored for quite some time until I get a PM from somebody. And normally when I see message request, I don't even look at it because I'm just like, what the heck is this? But someone messaged me and was telling me how to do the combo. And I was like, all right, sick. Thank you for actually reaching out and telling me this. And the next message was like, do you live in Mount Airy? And I was like, whoa. Well, do I need to like block this person? Like they have like my IP address or something. And then they were like, do you know Ty Payne? So then it just went from there, and literally met Justin online in a Thunder Dragon group on Facebook when the guy has lived like an hour and a half away from me, like forever.
Don't lie, it was Tinder.
Oh yeah, it was Tinder. Yeah. No, that's yeah. But that's probably like the craziest way I've ever met a friend from Yu-Gi-Oh was with Justin.
Don't forget to add this. So you put together a Thunder Chaos deck after Colossus was banned, right?
Yeah, Colossus.
I proceed to take Dark Magician to locals just for you to beat me with a deck that I taught you some of the combos with.
Yes.
It's like what? But
yeah, I remember like that was when the deck played like the opening of the Spirit Gates and Dark Beckoning Beast, and I just remember
Chaos
like,
Creator.
Yes, I remember you made 2 Dragoons, and I was like, how do I get over this? And then I did, and I was like, how did I get over that? I miss Thunder Dragons though. That deck was so much fun.
That deck was probably the most fun I've had with a deck since Tengu Plant.
If Colossus ever gets unbanned, I will play that deck whether it's good or whether it's bad.
Oh yeah. I even thought about like trying to play the deck with just like Thunder King Raya as like some kind of like simplest local.
Thunder Dragon Fusion, man. Thunder Dragon Fusion can search T King. You know, there you go.
He's not the same. So like,
it's not the same.
I remember I was playing Goat and I was playing like Chaos Turbo with Thunder Dragon, and I'm like, this is not what he's used for.
Yep.
But so I think that since we're 40 minutes into the show, I think that we need to give the listeners some good news about some upcoming events.
Yeah. So what is it? The 28th of this month? 28th of this
Yes.
month, we're going to be traveling to Smithfield, North Carolina for a cash tournament at Big Boy Games. It is obviously going to be Edison format. So we're going to be traveling there for that. So if you'll be there, we will be seeing you. I think it's going to be me and Justin and Austin, I believe, making the trip to that one. And following up with that in February, if you listen to the I Am Nerd podcast that Fraser Smith does, he mentioned that there's going to be a PS5 tournament in where is it? It's right outside Philadelphia.
It's in Reading, Pennsylvania,
Yes, we will also be there at the end of
which
February.
is ironic for a city where a Yu-Gi-Oh card tournament is going to be held.
No one there will be reading, but that takes
No,
place on the 25th of February, so we'll be there if
and
everything works out. So
I am stoked for the cash tournament. Don't get me wrong, but this PS5 tournament, let me tell you this: if entry is $10 a person, that's telling you they're expecting a large turnout.
I would.
So
I'm probably thinking. What do you think? Over 100 people?
yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be, and you got to look at this, right? So if you listen to other podcasts, and we touched up on this before, there are certain cities and communities that have large Yu-Gi-Oh communities, and not just large communities, but large communities of competitive players. And Philadelphia and the cities around it is known for having YCS champions, really competitive players. And so Fraser Smith is going to be there. You're probably going to have some other YCS champions or people that's topped YCSs and things like that, Shonen Jump championships. So I'm thinking that this is probably going to be the most competitive tournament that we've been in. Especially Edison, by far the largest Edison tournament that we've been in. And until Nats, this is probably the biggest thing that we have coming our way.
Yeah.
And I think that warrants the 5.5 hour drive, 6 hour drive. We're going to make a weekend of it. We hope that anyone listening decides to go out there and play with us. I don't know about you, man, but I'm really thinking about taking like Lightsworn Fairies.
I think that deck plays in Edison format like a modern deck does now. It is all gas. There's no back row removal outside of Lila, which is like Lila's such a good card to get pluses off of. Like you can get 17 damage in and get a back row pop and get a mill 3. On top of playing like the only real hand trap, like obviously Gores and Honest and stuff like that, but Herald of Orange Light is so unexpected. And Soul of Purity and Light, no normal summon in the entire format attacks over Soul of Purity and Light. Like that card is so underrated, it's not even funny.
And not only are you, and I don't want to take away from I Am Nerds podcast, but you're no longer dealing with one boss monster; you're dealing with two.
You
so
have to watch the
you can either
graveyard.
you can either look and say, okay, I have a big Lightsworn engine. I'm going to focus on getting JD on board, or I have a large presence of fairies in my grave. I'm going to focus on not caring so much about Lightsworn and getting Christy on board. So you have two different engines that are both very oppressive, and that can either stall until they get game on board, or just blow you out turn 2.
Yeah.
So are you still thinking about taking Blackwing?
Yeah, I think I might end up playing Blackwing at both of the upcoming tournaments because, like, once again, Fraser Smith got among men when it comes to Edison format, but really puts it into perspective when he says, like, Blackwing is the only deck that can normal summon Brio, Armed Wing, and Goyo Guardian because they have Blizzard. Like, Blizzard equals normal summon Goyo Guardian, and just being able to, like, keep Black Whirlwind on the field turns your deck into like a good gadget deck where like you're actually grabbing real cards every single turn. So I think I'm going to do something with like some Dark Bribes, Starlight Road, and just kind of play like the resource game every turn, normal summon a Blackwing, search one with less attack, keep up the damage, keep adding Kalut, Gale. You can search like your values towards discards. Like I've seen some builds go to playing Phoenix Wing Windblast now. And so I definitely think that Blackwing is among the top decks that I might end up playing at the event.
I'm really looking forward to these events because, and especially the Pennsylvania event, just because like it's going to be an event that we travel to. It's going to be the furthest Yu-Gi-Oh event that we've gone to. Well, you went to Vegas, so I mean that's not quite as far as Vegas, but it just reminds me of like the classic Yu-Gi-Oh trips you would take to go to like a big event, you know?
Yeah, that's
Um,
something we really haven't seen a lot of since before the pandemic.
yeah, and I'm very curious to see what all decks are being brought because we know that Blackwing has a very large online presence, but I think that just looking at the past two Switch events we've been to, Blackwing isn't nearly represented as much in person.
It's not.
Um, and I don't know if it's because people are just going to expect a lot of Blackwing, so they choose not to bring it themselves because they don't want to play the mirror, or because everyone's just sick of playing Blackwing. I know that I got very bored of the deck very quickly, so I switched up. But I'm very interested. I'm very interested to see what changes between now and then because, like on the other podcast, they talked about once you think the format's solved, then people just do a complete flip on it and make up decks that you've never even heard of before. Um, I've been wanting to try out the Frog Hero Monarch deck, and I was testing it earlier, and it's very fun. I just hate decks that like if you don't see them like if you don't see the Monarchs in those hands, like you're playing a stall game, and it just becomes a very long and very boring game, and you really want to push the game too. And I think that takes away some of the fun of the game. But overall, I do think it's a very good deck. I've been looking at it. What other decks have you been looking at?
So outside of Blackwing, a deck that I've always really wanted to like is Quick Draw. Um, I really something about that is just so nostalgic to me because I remember pulling a Drill Warrior, an Ultimate Rare First Ed Drill Warrior, and it being $1, and getting rid of it. Actually, I think I gave it away, and then Jeff Jones wins SJC Edison the next day, and bam, $50 the next day. That's like the quickest L I've ever taken in Yu-Gi-Oh. But I think that Quick Draw has its goods and its bads. I do think that in the meta, being able to just constantly loop DD Crow is really, really strong. Being able to manipulate your opponent's graveyard, especially playing against things like Light Sworn, playing against things like Vayu or Welly Dad, anything, because a lot of decks in Edison format are very graveyard reliant. So I've kind of thought about playing Quick Draw. Another deck that I have played for a while is X Saber, and it's just kind of one of the classic like you draw your one of rescue cat deck, but that deck can kill you very quickly. And it's a deck that I saw recently. E3 Yu-Gi-Oh has been playing again. Go check him out. He makes some good Edison content as well. But X Saber is really just a deck to where it can grind you out very quickly. And once you start getting like Gotham's E-Call flipped on you every turn, it pretty much becomes very difficult to stay in the game, especially if they're using Gothams to launch off your entire hand every turn. So I think that would be probably like my second choice deck. Are you still there? Did we lose you? Well, guys, I think somehow we lost Justin.
Oh, I was on mute.
Oh, you're on. Okay, all right.
I
I was
heard
about
everything you said. No,
I was about to start talking
I
about my greatest hits and start talking about all the times I've gotten like 19th place at locals and stuff.
out of 10 people.
Yeah, out of 10 people.
No,
Yeah, Mike from
it's
the Edison
just
Club's
thinking,
greatest hits,
talk,
19th place in a 10-person tournament.
talking about X Saber. It's a shame that decks like that are just one set away from being really, really, really good. Um,
If X Saber had X Saber Dark Soul, and the first line of its text said you can only play one copy of this card in your deck, I think that X Saber would immediately be the best deck, even with one.
yeah, and I think that if we had Elemental Hero the Shining, I think Hero Beat would be on a different level. Um, so that's two cards that I wish were in Edison's format, but I'm sort of glad they're not because then you would have a definitive like best deck, and that's what makes Edison so good is that we don't have that,
Yeah.
per se. You don't have a deck. I would say you probably have your best decks. Like you have Black Wings, you have the Fairy Light Sworn, but you don't have any deck that is just like impossible to beat, like you would in modern.
Yeah.
Which is what I really like about the format. But it would be so cool to have those cards. Just even test. We should do that one day. Is stream some games where you have one Dark Soul, and I can have like one Shiny or something like that, and just see how it affects the gameplay.
Yeah, that's something that I thought about doing. Is like, I actually kind of wanted to host a tournament for it, but I've never done anything on that level where like it's Edison format, but you can use one copy of one card past Edison format as long as the mechanic exists within Edison format. So like you couldn't use a Link monster, couldn't use an XYZ, couldn't use a Pendulum. But for example, you could do something like play Raiden Lightsworn Monk in Lightsworn, or play one Dark Soul in X Saber, just to see the kind of ingenuity that people would come up with for something like that.
I think that'd be very fun. That would be very interesting to see happen. Because we know that the format's not going to change. Well, not the format, but we know the list isn't going to change. So I think it'd be like a really cool twist to add to it. You have like a little 8-man person tournament or something, like a small cash pool or something, or like a card or something up for grabs, and it'd be very fun. And doing something like that could possibly open up like some other lines of play. Like let's say I play Raiden, right, and it gets me this interaction. Okay, well that's cool, but maybe I could do this interaction with the card that's legal in Edison,
Exactly.
I'm glad you know what I'm talking about, because it's kind of hard for me to communicate this what I'm trying to say, but I think it'd be very fun. I think a lot of people would like to do that, and I'm sure there's like lots of other decks out there that were like, oh my gosh, like what if I had this card for my deck? Like how different would Black Wings be if they could have Breeze, an instant, special from adding off Whirlwind, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So a deck that's already quick like that to get an even quicker monster, how much of an impact would that make? So I think that'd be something that we should sit down and look at one day for sure.
Yeah. I think that would also be like one of the times where like I've always wanted to do like a format where you could use one ban card. I don't think that there are any cards that are banned in Edison format that you could even allow to be played in a tournament, because they are all absolutely just insane. Like Change of Heart comes off the ban list in 2021, does nothing, but if that card was legal in Edison format, Brain Control is already like the best top deck, but then you times that by 2.
Dimension Fusion in Edison format would be busted, and Dimension Fusion in Modern would be busted.
Yes. Like, I think every card that's on the ban list in Edison format would result in, like, just ruining the entire format, even being put at 1. At least most of them. Like, there might be a few cards, like, that no one would play, but it's very limited compared to, like, today. Like, even Tribe Infecting Virus, like, Tribe Pitch Vayu, like, nuke your board. Tribe Pitch Sirocco, like...
Is Last Will banned in Edison?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I do not want to play against Monarchs when they Last Will into Substitute.
Have you seen... Okay, I was watching Critter format earlier, right? And apparently the ruling in Critter format is you can let Last Will resolve at any point in the game. So let's say that you Last Will at the beginning of your turn, right? And your monster is... I'm trying to think here. Anyways, you can have it resolved during battle phase if you want to.
Really?
Yeah. So like I forget the interaction it was, but they Last Willed a card. They sacrificed it, right? They didn't summon anything off Last Will or resolving or anything, because they were trying to bait out an opponent's trap. Anyways, during battle phase, I guess they realized their opponent didn't have any like battle traps. During battle phase, they said that their Last Will was resolving, and they specialed from deck and won the game. And the people were... the channel's called Who Needs Meta. Yeah. They play like a lot of like past format stuff, and they was explaining that Last Will back in Critter format could resolve at any point of the turn in which you wanted it to.
Man,
and
old
to me that's
rulings
insane.
Are so crazy. Like, I think the ruling like that carries over to Edison format that no one really follows is like on the official rulings, Quick Draw Synchron activates as an activated effect in Edison format even though there's nothing on that card that states that effect activates. It's
No,
literally chaos
it's
sorcery.
supposed to be an inherent special summon.
Yeah, and I don't ever see anyone activate Quick Draw Synchron. I think it's just understood, like that card just does not activate. That a judge at SJC Edison just ruled it that way.
And I can't think of anybody outside of maybe a prick that would be like, oh, I'm gonna orange light it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and honestly, I think there would just be better opportunities in that line of play to negate. You know, if that were an effect, there'd be better moments in that line of play to negate than just the summon of that card.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that I don't know who made it that ruling. I don't know who made it the last wheel ruling in 2002. That was just dumb. But I'm glad that the community overall just acknowledges, like, yeah, we know that's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And what's very surprising is you know that the whole ruling with absolute zero, and you reminded me of this, is that it would still get its effect to send to extra deck.
Yes, when I learned that.
In modern format, it's not recognized as leaving the field once it's in the extra deck. So
when I first got into the format and was testing out these different decks, and people would like try to trigger AZ off like the most common interaction is Brian X sending it back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, it doesn't trigger. And they're like, okay. And I finally like saw it happen. I think in one of like E3's videos or maybe DB Grinder, and I was like, you cannot tell me that effect activates in the extra deck. I look it up under individual card rulings, 100% goes off if it's sent back to the extra deck, which is so insane. Like, you better have Brio plus like Starlight Road.
And I've been doing that online, and I kid you not, every single time I've done that, nobody has argued it. They've always been like, all right, cool.
I would have argued until the ends of the earth with you, like a few months ago. But I would have sat there and waited for that judge call for 16 days and 16 nights before I let that go through.
And that's crazy, because you'll get people that will not argue that, but they'll argue things that are so stupid, like Gemini Spark. It tributes for cost. Or they try to book a Moon Neos alias. Like, Neos isn't on field anymore.
Or the most common thing I run into is people trying to torrential a set.
Yeah.
Or trying to Thunder King like a Gorz token or a Gorz.
I think another confusing interaction is people trying to torrential the Stardust that was summoned off of Starlight Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't do that because the last thing happening is Road resolving. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then of course, if you do tribute the Stardust, he's not going to come back, which is something that. But it's crazy. You put Brio back. You put Absolute Zero back in your extra. Oh, that's cool. So it makes you wonder, like, it's one of two things. They either know that's fine, that's correct in Edison, or they're just they're so dumb that they believe it. They would think it happened in modern like that too. So
yeah.
The online community is very entertaining. They can really make you mad and just want to throw your laptop and not test for a week, or it can be like, all right, we're having some fun.
Yeah. So there is no 50-50. Unranked Dueling Book is a godless place. Like, okay, well, we got 2 minutes until an hour, so we're kind of winding down here. I'm going to go up through the live chat. Just kind of give a shout out to everyone that's been watching throughout the course of the video. Shout outs to the Big Bearded One, Duelist Sync JD, obviously my friend Michael Gammons, Mayberry Picker. We also have, let's see, One Shingami, which is Tony Icon from Locals. We have Gabriel. I'm probably going to butcher a lot of you guys' names. I'm very sorry. Let's go say Gabriel. Thanks for watching, Gabriel. And looks like I got everyone. So thank you guys for watching the stream. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Justin, you have any closing statements before we shut it down for the night?
No. So if anybody listening is interested in that PS5 tournament, it is at a store called Unmatched Gaming, and it is the last weekend of February. There is no February 31st, Michael. Remember that.
Yeah. Earlier I said it was on February 31st.
Or something like that, yeah.
I said it was on February 29th, so I was like, just gotta wait till leap year. Yeah,
we'll wait there 4 years until we can play, and then then Modern will be a new Time Wizard format. You can go on their Facebook. You can look at the event. I think it's $10 a person. I know it's far away for us, but we're going to have a blast. If a fourth person wants to go, hint, let us know. and the upcoming cash tournament in Smithfield, North Carolina. So we have that last weekend of this month, 28th. So if anyone's interested in that, come meet us. Love to hang out. See what you think about Edison. What you think about the podcast. That's all I got.
Yeah, and we do locals at Easy Gaming. It's on South Holden Road in Greensboro, North Carolina. We do Edison locals every Saturday at 1 o'clock. Um, Looking at maybe having some bigger stakes Edison tournaments down the road, maybe for some bigger prizing. Also, there's another shop in town called Picante Trading Card Games. They've been known to hold some larger scale Edison tournaments, so make sure that you look them both up on Facebook, give them both a like, keep up with it if you're in the area, don't mind, or you don't mind driving. Both nice places. I'd recommend both to anybody. Easy Gaming is a sponsor of myself, therefore a sponsor of the channel. So good group of guys there. And just once again, like to thank everybody for listening to the podcast. Justin, thanks for joining me tonight. Sorry,
Yeah, man.
sorry that we couldn't have the other two, but I'm sure that we will be reunited very soon. So, guys, this is Mike and Justin from the Edison Club podcast signing out. We'll see you all next week.